Hello everyone and welcome to another DaVinci Resolve tutorial. In today's video, we're going to quickly go over one of the easiest and fastest ways to color grade your footage and get a professional look. This method can be used to stylize, to get better whites, to adjust hue and saturation to specific colors, and it's literally just making sure you're in the right place and clicking and dragging how you want it. It's so easy, but very, very powerful. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe to this channel. I'm new, but I am slowly growing and I would love to share my knowledge in DaVinci Resolve with you so that you can create better videos. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So I have DaVinci Resolve pulled up right here. And I have a clip here that is ungraded. Now, it has been corrected, or excuse me, not corrected, it's been transformed into the correct color space. So it was originally filmed in S-Log3, and I have converted it to Rec. 709. And that's been done before the color grading process. So even if I bypass all of my nodes up here in the corner, you'll see that it won't change. We're starting with a Rec. 709 converted clip. The first thing I'm going to do here is with any color grading, the first thing you always want to do is apply a small curve, at least in my opinion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and just make sure that you have editable splines enabled right here in the three dots. It's, in my opinion, the easiest way to apply an S curve. So I'm going to pull the blacks up just a little bit. Then I'm going to bring my shadows down here, and I'm going to make sure that this is kind of a shorter spline. But for this one up here, I'm going to stretch it out just a little bit more, and maybe just like that, and bring it up. So that just adds a little bit more contrast and just kind of brings out the color, makes it pop. And on this node, this is going to be our color grading node. So like I said, it's super, super easy. All you have to do is go over to the color warper, and with the color warper selected, your DaVinci Resolve should default, at least in your viewer here, it should default to the qualifier. And what the qualifier does, if you'll notice, when I hover over different parts of the video, you'll notice that it actually highlights it down here in my color warper, and it shows me what I'm actually hovering over. And so not only does it give me the information of what color is where it shows up in the color warper. So let's say I wanted to change these greens here. I could hover over and be like, oh, it's those ones right there. So I need to adjust right here. You can actually just take the simplicity a step further, and while you're hovering over your image, you can actually just click and drag. So watch this, click and drag, and it grabs that color. Obviously this is to the extreme. You wouldn't want to do anything crazy like this, but for example purposes, I'm showing you that I can just click and drag. Now, your mouse movement corresponds with one-to-one corresponds with the movement of your the point that you have selected down there. So if I move it up, it'll move it up on the color warper. If I move it down, it'll move it down. If I move it left, left, right, right. So basically what you need to keep in mind is the position of these dots in relationship to the outer edge and the center will determine how it affects the color. So for example, if I grab this dot and I orbit, that's going to change the hue. So if I orbit around the center, then that's going to change the hue of the clips, but not the saturation, okay? But if I do not orbit, if I just go directly out away from the center, that's going to saturate. And if I pull it in, that's going to desaturate. So you need to kind of take into account those. And by the way, if you make a change, you can actually right click on any of these to reset it. So that's how you make the changes to that. So there's a couple things that I want to do with this clip. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of stylize the greens just a little bit. They're nice and green, but they have just a little too much yellow in them for me, at least for my style. I like to make greens look kind of more lush green, not warm yellow. Again, this is personal preference. You can use this tool however you like. Just don't go overboard. Again, subtlety is the key with color grading. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to bring it down just a little bit, maybe just like one little point here, just like that. Okay. And you can tell already that it's a very subtle effect, but it's there and it's helping to kind of cool the image off a little bit, make those greens look a bit more lush. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my skin tones are perfect. Now, if you don't know how to do this already, I will show you. What you do is you go to your vector scope, and inside your vector scope, you have your show skin tone grade, show skin tone right here. So that yellow or white line right there. So I'm going to go to my scopes and I'm going to go to my vector scope. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify where it is on the display qualifier focus. That should also give us, okay, cool. So if you also, little tip, if you click on these three dots, click display qualifier focus, then not only will you get the information of the color on your color warper down here, but you'll also get it on your vector scope, which is important because if you look right here, if I go to the skin tones right here, you can see that they are a little too far to the yellow. They're not quite on the skin tone line. And so there's a couple ways that you can do this, but I like to just use the color warper. I can click and drag these skin tones and I can just move them closer to my skin tone line. I don't want to go overboard because you can see that her face is starting to turn too pink. We want to be careful about that. So I'm just going to get kind of close to it. And that would maybe suggest that if we go back to here, we might have a bit of a white balance issue. So if I make sure that my white balance and tint is a little bit more on point, you can see here that my tint, I think, was just a little bit off. So if I bring it to the right, just a few more points there, now you can see that our skin tones are matching up on the skin tone lines very nicely, and it looks a little funky. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go back to my skin tones. I'm going to grab them. The reason it looks funky is because we are oversaturating the skin tones. We do not want that. So we have them to be very close to what they are supposed to be, but they are oversaturated. So we want to make sure that we do not oversaturate. Okay. And I'm just clicking and dragging this so that it just slightly adjusts the color warper down there. And it looks like my greens still need to go back to where I wanted them. So I'm actually going to do that real quick. There we go. I have one more clip here if you want to stick around. So this is the clip here where we're going to use this tool to, well, first we're going to adjust our S curve, but after that, we're going to use this tool to really make her dress even wider and just make it pop, especially against the skin tones of this clip. So this, I'm quite proud of myself though. This clip was exposed beautifully, right, exposed to the right for S-Log, converted to Rec 709. The colors and everything actually already look fantastic. I just need to do a little bit of work. So on this first node, I'm going to go back to my main color wheels and I'm going to bring down the offset, just to the overall exposure, bring it down just a little bit here. I'm going to make sure editable splines is selected, and I'm going to really make those shadows come out just a bit more, and it is gonna saturate the image just a little bit as well. And if it's a little oversaturated, then I can actually bring that down, but it looks pretty good to me. I don't think it's overly done just yet. Okay, Alt S to create a new serial node. And in this one, I am going to use the color warper. And with this, we're going to focus on the dress. So right here, let's kind of go up here to her shoulders. I'm going to go over and hover right here. And you can see that if I'm watching my color warper, it's going to show what's being selected. So I have to be careful because if I go too close to the skin tones, then I'll end up hitting those skin tones, and I don't want to hit the skin tones too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go until I find right about, probably actually right here. There it is, right here. And if I grab that, I'm going to drag it towards the center just a little bit, just to kind of desaturate it. Maybe even bring it down just a hair, just to adjust the tint so it looks more white and clean to my eyes. Again, it's very subtle. So if you can see here, if I turn the effect on and off, it can be quite subtle, but it just really helps to make that whiteness, that white dress kind of pop, right? So now that I've done that, I'm going to come back over to my, if I can get the right thing pulled up, vector scope, and I have my skin tones. My skin tones are already just so like almost perfect. So I'm just going to grab those and just make sure that they are right on that skin tone line. You can see that they actually come up quite nicely on my skin tone line now. And that again can be subjective. I know a lot of people that will color grade to make their skin tones look a certain way. But I personally just want to get it as close to accurate as possible, right on that skin tone line. And then I can, edit it a bit more subjectively after that. And finally, just to bring everything all together, again, I will go to my log wheels and let's bring out some of the blue in kind of that blue teal, maybe even add just a bit more blue because that just looks really nice in the shadows. And there you have it, just like that. That is how you use the color warper. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. As a reminder, if you've made it through the end of this video, which I know most of you haven't, but if you have, thanks again. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe for more content. I plan to upload more often, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.